This is the brand new 100 to 500mm telephoto lens from Lumix, and it's pretty special. First Lumix lens that we've seen announced since the 24-60 that launched alongside the S1 II, and it just goes to show Lumix's commitment to continuing to develop the lenses available for the L-mount system, and particularly for me, which I'm most excited about, I think it goes a long way to showing their commitment to photographers. Now this is a focal range that I think is very much aimed towards sports photography or wildlife photography, hence why I decided to take this to a monkey forest, and I had one of the most fun morning shooting that I've had in a long time. However, there is still a place for it if you are a landscape photographer, because you can just start to pick out little details of a much wider scene. But this is a seriously impressive piece of glass, and I think it is going to make a lot of wildlife and nature photographers very, very happy. And that makes me happy because even though I don't do a lot of wildlife photography myself, I do it occasionally, but not very often. It's like I said in my last video, I think more photographers should start to look at Lumix cameras. And when I say that, I mean the full frame lineup of cameras for photography, because I think Lumix have got such a good name for video, they tend to get overlooked for photography a little bit. And I think slowly that is starting to shift and we're starting to get there. And I think lenses like this are going to make people start to think twice. You can also get teleconverters to use with this lens, either a 1.4 or a 2 times teleconverter, and that would turn this lens into either a 700 or a 1000mm lens on the long end, which is mental. But then you can also, on top of that, use Lumix's hybrid zoom feature, and that would give you, let me just read this so I know I get it right, up to 1562mm, or if you use a teleconverter, up to 3125mm reach. Yeah. Now, I'll be honest, I don't typically tend to shoot much outside of between 35 and 50mm for 90% of my photography, so I don't think that I'm gonna need that much reach. 3125mm is insane. But if you do fancy trying to spot Neil Armstrong's footprints on the moon, this might be the lens for you. Physically, it is a pretty big lens and it extends quite far as well, and it weighs just over 1.2 kilograms. Now that does sound quite hefty, but for a lens with this reach, that's not too bad at all. And when it is retracted all the way down at 100mm, it is the size of about a 400mm lens. So that means that even though it is quite big, you can easily fit it in your camera bag. It is fully weather sealed down to -10 degrees, and it is dust and splash resistant as well. And the front element has got some form of new coating on it to make it even easier to be able to get rid of any oily residue dirt that you might get on it while you're out and about shooting in the wild. But overall, it is a very well built lens. It is absolutely solid. On the body of the lens itself, you've got a bunch of useful features. So you have the focus range switch, the autofocus manual switch, obviously the zoom ring and the focus ring. You have a smooth tight ring, which I think is probably the only thing on this lens that I'm not entirely convinced by. It's basically so you can change how smooth and tight the focus ring is, or the zoom ring. I'm not sure entirely which one. But either way, I'm not sure it makes that much of a difference, so I need to play around with that a little bit more. But you also get the optical image stabilisation mode switch and a zoom limit switch as well. Oh, and there's also a function button on the side which is fully customizable to whatever you want. The focus ring is also fully customizable, and in the box it also comes with the tripod mount, which is fully rotating, so if you want to go from shooting landscape to portrait very quickly and easily, that is super helpful. I've been really impressed with the image quality from this lens. It is sharp all the way through, even all the way in at 500mm, which is where you will find that a lot of telephoto lenses start to break up just a little bit. This has been super sharp all the way through. The images look absolutely stunning, and there is tons of detail in them, and they get loads of subject separation as well. And that might be something that you're maybe a little bit conscious about, because it does have a variable aperture of f5 to f7.2. Now that might not sound like the widest aperture, and it isn't, but that's not an issue at all, because when you are working at these sorts of focal ranges, you get so much compression that you still get loads of subject separation and depth of field, and you can create some really nice blurry background and some stunning bokeh as well. This image that I have up on my screen is the prime example of that. Now this was shot all the way in at 500mm, 1/800th of a second shutter speed, ISO 800, and an aperture of f7.2. And that just goes to show that even though you are shooting at f7.2, look how much separation there is between the background and the monkey, and that's all down to the amount of compression that you're getting shooting at that focal range. Look at the separation and look how much depth of field that gives you. It's absolutely stunning. There's no chromatic aberration to be seen anywhere, there's no flares or ghosting, there's no strange colours or weird artifacts showing up anywhere. Even when you are shooting in some quite tricky lighting conditions, this is quite a tricky scene. There's a lot going on because it's very contrasty, it's pretty much backlit, handles it so well. I'm genuinely amazed by the image quality you get from this lens. On top of that though, I think what makes this lens even more impressive, and it comes down to the usability side of things, but it does have an impact on the image quality as well, and that is the optical image stabilisation built into this lens, which gives you 7 stops of image stabilisation. But you use that on top of the IBIS system built into Lumix cameras, and then on top of that, if you need to, you've got all of the E-stabilisation modes. It makes this lens so easy to be able to use handheld, which is absolutely crazy, because when you are using telephoto lens and you're shooting at the long end, it can be really tricky to be able to create stable footage, whether you're shooting video, or to be able to create sharp images that don't have some form of motion blurring, because shooting at the longer focal ranges, it is so hard to be able to keep it still. The stabilisation built into this lens is absolutely incredible, and it makes shooting photos all the way in at 500mm, and it's the same for video. I'm going to come on to video a little bit later on, but it makes it surprisingly easy, and that is no mean feat in a telephoto lens. When I first heard about this lens, I was a little bit concerned about what the autofocus performance would be like, because it is such a big focal range, and with that comes a lot of moving parts inside the lens. But the autofocus motor that is inside this has performed incredibly well. It is fast, it is quick, and it is surprisingly quiet as well, which really shocked me because, like I mentioned, this is a big lens. There is a lot of glass to move around inside this, so to have such quick, quiet autofocus, that is really impressive. And that is the case whether you're shooting photos or video. It performed really, really well. And there was the odd missed shot, but that's only natural. You're always going to miss shots, especially when you've got a subject that's moving as fast as baby monkeys or sports cars. You're occasionally going to get the odd missed frame, but on the whole, 95% of my shots were in focus, and that's the same for video as well. And I was even shooting in 100 frames a second, which doesn't quite have the same speed of autofocus when you compare it to 25 or 50 frames a second. I'm using the Lumix S1 II, and it doesn't quite have the full PDAF that 25 or 50 frames a second has, and it was still performing really well and catching on to the monkeys. Really impressive. I didn't actually shoot that much video with this lens because I'm a photographer first, so I mainly wanted to test it for photography. But when I did shoot video, like I said, I mainly shot in 100 frames a second. But again, it is the stabilization that makes this lens, I think, so usable, and that makes me want to use it even more. Typically, when I've used big telephoto lenses, I've not enjoyed the experience because it's not that easy when you are shooting at the longer focal ranges, as I mentioned earlier, because the longer the focal range, the harder it is to be able to get stable shots. But like I said, the stabilisation in this just makes it so much more simple to be able to do that, and it makes you enjoy using the lens more, and you want to be able to go and capture those shots. To be able to capture such close-up shots of these monkeys, such detailed shots at 500mm and even further if you use hybrid zoom like I mentioned, with such ease is mind-blowing. And like I mentioned before as well, on top of the stabilisation that's built into the lens, the IBIS system built into the camera, you've also got all of the E-stabilisation modes. The possibilities are endless. It is, honestly, it is a dream to use. The only other telephoto lens that I've used that is similar to this is the Sigma 100-400, which I made a video about a little while ago, and I'll link it down below if you want to go and have a look at it. And yes, this is a little bit more pricey than the Sigma, and the image quality is probably fairly similar. I'd say the autofocus and the stabilisation are much better in this, and for that reason, even though this is more pricey, I think if you can afford it, I think I would probably go for this because it is so much more usable than the Sigma. So overall, this brand new Lumix 100-500mm telephoto zoom lens has really impressed me. It is sharp, it is really well built, it performs incredibly well. And if you're into sports or wildlife photography, I think it is probably a little bit of a game changer for the L mount, and it's gonna make photographers take the L mount system a lot more seriously. And for that reason, I think it is a very exciting time to be investing into the L mount system, with so many new lenses becoming available, not just from Lumix themselves, but also from Sigma and other third-party brands like TT Artisan. There is new lenses being announced all of the time. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below about this new lens. Are you excited about it? If you want to go and watch another video all about the Lumix S1 II, I recommend you go and watch this video next, and I will see you then.